Well, welcome again to Third Phase of the Moon, and we're really happy to have, again, Professor John Searle from the UK. We uploaded a video this past week or so in regards to his free energy device, and the comments that came in were explosive. The video went viral. People really want to get more information, and we're really happy to have Professor Searle with us. Thanks again.
I'm fine, thanks.
The Searle machine, the free energy device, you know, this thing has caused controversy. This caused this man to go to jail because they alleged he didn't pay his electric bill. And he created what can solve the world's problems. Bradley and John, why don't you tell us a little bit about how this came to be, and then we'll jump some great questions.
Well, I'll take the lead there. First of all, John was never arrested for stealing anything. He never stole anything, and we'll let him fill in the blanks to clear up for your audience what that was all about. Essentially, it was a battle between he and the electric board over some missed wiring in his home. And John will be able to explain that as well. What he did, which is so extraordinary, is come up with a device that takes advantage of the rare earth material in that he harvests the electrons from the outer valence. Now, that's not very difficult to understand. If you look at an atom and you have a shell with electrons in it, out on the very top shell of any of the rare earths are spare electrons. And we know that electrons comprise electric current, which runs everything electric all over planet Earth. This man in 1946 configured from his dreams a device that is able to harvest and convert those electrons into usable electricity. John Roy?
Yes. The device itself really is, well, when you look at it, it's so simple. You've got 3 plates, they're circular rings, and between them run a set of rollers, and these are always in constant motion. You never stop them, because there's no reason to stop them. The beauty of this is there is technically no noise that you get from a normal generator, because the rollers actually float like two-thou off the surface of the plate. They can never fly off, as the experts kept saying they would. And again, the thing is, because it's not burning anything, it is really clean. There's nothing about it that you could say is dirty or pollution. It is probably the most cleanest device outside of solar cells and wind power, the cleanest unit ever produced by man. Its advantage over the other machines is that it produces a very, very heavy negative charge, which is good because it cleans the air, pollution, it makes you feel good, it improves the oxygen, and of course, if you get hurt, it helps to heal the damage very quick. And I'm talking from experience.
Your machine, your device, you've created a couple. I know you've created this levitation device, which had a little incident that blew upon a roof. And more importantly, your machines. I heard that up to 3 were confiscated for their reasons because this would collapse the $600 trillion petrodollar empire, for that matter, overnight, because you can fix the poverty nations, the nations that have no electricity or plumbing with your device. We can all have this free energy without burning our fossil fuel, and it's being suppressed. We need to get this out there. John, what's it going to take for us to build it?
Unfortunately, it's not 1946 now. I'm afraid cost has zoomed up, unbelievable. But the thing is, we've got to look at it in a different light. Here is a machine that you pass down to your family, they pass it to their family, and it goes on because there is never no wear or tear. That's the beauty of it. It's not only that it's clean of pollution and stuff like that. It is the fact that it cannot wear out. This is something no other motor can do.
Yeah, and if I may here, John, one of the things that Searle told me very early on when we were filming the John Searle story, relativity back in the 20s, when Heisenberg and Einstein and Niels Bohr and the rest, they were looking at the atom and they realized that there was a tremendous amount of energy inside an atom. And so how do we get that energy out? Well, let's hit it with a hammer. In other words, fire a neutron at it or fire some other smaller particle at it and blow this thing apart. Well, naturally, you're going to get energy, but you're going to get the byproducts, the thermal capacity that comes out of the atom. What Searle said to me early on was, why hit it with a hammer? Why not influence those electrons with a magnetic field, what he calls a magnetic flux, and induce those atoms to come out through magnetic flux? Is that about right, John Roy?
That's correct, yes.
It's an astounding thing to not blast apart the atom, but to induce the atom to give you the electrons necessary for flowing current.
It's good. You got to bear in mind is that the electrons are always in motion. They are obviously oscillating, but they also have a habit of spinning. And this is where the magnetic flux line wins, because if they are moving constant rate and they're tending to spin, they tend to flip around that particular flux line, just like there's a copper wire. And it will spin around there and speed up, and the force is pushing it outwards. So it will pass on, and it obeys, of course, the laws of Newton. When it comes out, it travels along the back of the rollers, but then you need a force to turn it, to bring it round the front. But we do not apply any force. We allow it to continue in a straight line to the next rare earth layer, which absorbs it because it is positive, and on it goes through the system. This is something which is not normal in a normal electric motor.
You know, I'm actually getting a question right here live from a Third Phase of Moon fan. They want to know, they said, okay, ask John Searle about the National Ignition Laboratory facility in Livermore. Apparently, it's supposed to be a U.S.-funded free energy. That's what I'm hearing here. Can you tell us what you know about this? Is it linked to you? Are they using your technology? This person listening would love to know.
As far as I know, that the only thing going on now is to develop a fighter which can be unmanned, because a fighter unmanned can turn sharper at high speeds, where a pilot would never withstand that type of treatment. Their work is, for spying and things like that. Unmanned craft, they're trying to develop more for spy work.
Yes, and I think it's important to note, John, that Searle Technology Incorporated is a very meticulous cross the T's, dot the I's, be compliant with SEC, IRS, all the rules, regulations, so that infrastructure is set up to re-engineer, to recreate Searle's device while we still have the inventor with us. So as far as any connection with that entity or other entities, we remain open to those connections. And it's not as if we're hiding anything. And John Roy, what do you say to those people that hide in the bush from the men in black?
My advice to them all, whether they're security, military, or government, the door is open. Come in. Let's have a cuppa. Let's have a chat. Come and see the power we are producing. All from nature. Come, we welcome you.
Well, the passion that you have, Mr. Searle, is what we really appreciate. You are, a fighter and trying to get this information and, this energy out so people could appreciate and enjoy life without all this, power and this money-hungry company.
You don't have to spy. It's an open door. If you come in, you're welcome.
We have a question from our caller who's actually, like we said earlier, the experiencer and submitter of Third Phase of Moon, who's going to tell an amazing story next hour. But right now, he's got a question for the Godfather, Free Energy, right here at Third Phase of Moon Radio. Joe, take it.
Yes. In regards to the magnetic flux, the process that goes, of course, I, like most, was always under the impression that the smashing was the hammer, if you will, was always necessary. Or maybe it just wasn't myself thinking that there were other possible ways of doing this. But through this process, is there any manipulation to the nucleus of the atoms? And secondly, are we then creating monatomic elements? Is that a possibility?
I would like to say for certain, we are investigating, we're carrying out full investigation at the lab in San Diego to find out what we actually doing. What we know is that we're not splitting the atom, we're just draining steadily the flow of power in which it simply collects from the air. As we drain it, switching it to positive, it collects energy from the air to switch back. We've got a chain running here which will never stop unless you forcefully stop it.
And if I may, Joe, what we're talking about here is the rare earth materials. What makes a rare earth material is that property of the outer valence possessing two spare electrons. They're essentially spares, and they're held on to a single atom of a rare earth material by a very light positive force. Now, once they're removed, it does not change the composition of the rare earth. It simply leaves it with a slightly positive charge. Now, if you imagine the Searle device at the center, you have neodymium, and if you're drawing those electrons off of the neodymium material, then that neodymium material in the center of the device is going to be left positively charged. Now, electrons in the ambience around the device, whether it's in the form of static or heat or sun radiation or beta decay, are going to seek that positive area, and they're going to begin to flow in and replenish that neodymium. Now, if you take it a step further, if you're going to peel off electrons and go into the world of alchemy, that's a completely different situation. All we're doing here, and all Searle did, was to recognize that there were electrons available in rare earth materials. Let's harvest those electrons, peel them off using magnetic flux, and once they're peeled off, it doesn't change neodymium except to make it a positively charged neodymium that will attract ambient electrons.
I understand. Is it always neodymium used in the process, or are there other rare earth materials such as iridium or osmium?
You can use any rare earth. The higher up you go in the number, the greater the force is, which means the energy can be made smaller. The higher the number is, the smaller the size of the energy need to be. And so everybody's using element 60 because that was what was used in the 40s. So they all want to use the same material at this stage of the research.
Of course. That makes sense. Thank you very much for clearing that up. It's a very, very interesting and profound theory. And
I wish you luck. I wish you luck with your energy.
Mr. Lockerman, can you tell us what's new and what's going to be coming soon for the Searle Group?
I'll be very glad to. They're working very hard down at the lab, looking for emissions and the different configurations. The situation down there is difficult in the sense that we are trying to re-engineer and recreate Searle's device. What was needed primarily was an infrastructure. And the infrastructure meaning that you had to take in enough investment capital in order to facilitate the recreation, the re-engineering of this device. So that means build the infrastructure. Once the infrastructure is built, then of course you can legitimately, legally, and in compliance with federal and all regulations, take in enough capital to get this job done. So that we've done that with a modest amount of success. But like I say, it's a modest group of people who are dedicated and moving forward as best we can with the resources that we have. John Roy, you want to comment?
Yes. I wish everyone to understand the effigies made in the 40s were made by hand, not intended for mass production, but just to experiment to please some old age men who wanted to see what I could do. Today, we have a big problem, which I forecast so many years ago would happen. We have pollution, which they laughed at when I was talking about it in the 40s. But it's here. We have to do something quick. We cannot make one effigy every 3 months. It's impossible to meet demand. We have to redesign and try to find the best way to do it. I believe the system I put forward we should develop is the quickest way we can produce SDGs. And if we can produce one every 5 seconds, I could be happy.
Free energy topic is very controversial. People are calling in from around the world right now. They want to ask questions for Professor Searle. And this question is coming in all the way from Brisbane, Australia. Cordell Dello is here. Cordell, welcome to the Third Phase. And do you have a question for Professor Searle?
Yeah, I do.
All right, go ahead. And thanks again.
So with the free energy machines, I've always seen a lot about them, and I've always just wondered what force does it use to actually generate the energy?
Well, it's in the rare earth. You do not have to use any outside source of energy. The force is there. The energy to feed it is all around you. There's all this wasted energy we're wasting, all this pollution containing energy within it. The machine will put it in, compress it, organize it, then they'll come up in negative pairs. One much higher charge than the other. One will go right, the other will go left. The process, it releases the electrical charge. And we're not destroying the atom in any way.
Yeah, so it basically follows on with the law that energy is not created nor destroyed, it's only rearranged.
Yeah, you rearrange it, you charge up, and you just release it. You burn nothing. I don't see why you've got to burn things just to get energy.
Oh, you don't, no. There's many ways that can be used, such as the one that you've presented.
Yeah, Cordell, Bradley here, if I may. What we're taking advantage of here is the ability of the electron to move. If you look on the quantum level, the only piece of any material down there with any mass or any energy to it is the electron. It is moving, and we've waded through the people that talk about the second law of thermodynamics. And they hit us with perpetual motion and these phrases, and especially when they say perpetual motion, I just hold up for them an electron. All things in our universe are in perpetual motion. The electron is in perpetual motion. It will upcharge and downcharge, but it's always in motion. So why not take advantage of that if it is possible? And we already know that through theories in physics like perturbation. Perturbation simply meaning that electrons will pass through any material or any space at any given time. It's called perturbation theory, but it is actual perturbation of electrons through any material. What Searle's doing here is inducing those electrons using magnetic fields to spin right out.
You know, I'm actually getting a question from another Third Phase of the Moon fan. Wow, everybody is digging this free energy because they know it's going to save the world. You know, Third Phase of Moon is getting the word out. We are proud of the Cousins brothers, and we're proud of you, John Searle and Bradley Lockerman, for working so hard to get this out there. Now, they're asking about a UFO incident. This might be related to what I was saying about the Levity machine. I think that's what they're asking about. They said, what's this UFO incident that flew into the sky?
Well, yes, I'd be glad to answer that. On Facebook, John Searle Story has a position on Facebook, and I think in the back there's a piece of black and white footage, and that came to us. It came to me several years ago. And I looked at this footage. It was two police constables who had chased a flying disc in the countryside in England. And I received this piece of footage, and I called John Roy up, and I said, John, I've got a piece of footage. And he said, without knowing it, he said, "Oh, the cops." And I said, "Yeah, tell me about the cops." John Roy, you want to take it? The policeman.
You know, I've been testing all this stuff in these books about aliens and that, and people are drawn to them and do this and that. And I've been testing people and found that the people react in the opposite direction. They run away, they get out of the area, they don't want to know. But I wondered, a policeman is trained to investigate anything regardless, even if it costs his life. The question now, what would happen if a police car sees a strange object which he's not aware of what it is? Will he investigate it, or will he just reverse and get out the way? So I thought, well, let's try one. And I saw this police car go along the road. So I brought I think it was a P10 I used on that one. I sort of hover it there to catch an eye. Then they started moving towards it. I started to keep it moving at a nice, gentle pace. Stop when they stop. And but I was surprised they were prepared to keep following it, regardless whether it was a threat to them or not.
And just to round out...
Which shows that they're trained regardless to investigate.
Bradley, go ahead and make your response. I just want to let you know we're going to come to a break in a couple minutes, so go ahead.
Okay, quickly to round out that story, in Warminster, there's a hill, and John Searle would fly the P-craft. You heard him mention the P-craft. He would fly the P-craft off of the hill each week just for testing purposes, different things. And there was quite a stir in Warminster. The town council got together because they kept seeing these flying discs, and they thought, what, are we being invaded? And this is the story where Searle, in front of the policeman, would be just teasing them with the flying disc, and they'd chase it, and he'd tease them again, they'd chase it. At the end, there's a piece of black and white footage that I mentioned on Facebook, John Searle Story, where the constables are describing in truthful...
Okay, gentlemen, I'm sorry. We are coming to a break. Folks, you stay tuned. 2 quick minutes. We'll be right back to Third Phase of Moon Radio. Welcome back to Third Phase of Moon Radio. We are researchers on a mission for the quest for the truth. We have an amazing show today. Of course, we got Blake Cousins and Brent Cousins on the phone. We got the godfather of free energy, John Searle, and Bradley Lockerman, manager and of Searle Group. He's the man who's getting everything together. We also have a contactee on the phone who's going to be speaking in hour 2, and we have someone else calling from Australia. He is actually a submitter. And briefly, Cordell, you had a little experience and you sent a video to Third Phase of Moon, which is going to be featured in our upcoming book. Can you briefly tell our listeners about the story before we get back to Searle? Because I got a burning question for you, John Searle and Bradley Lockerman.
Yeah, well, basically, as you know, if you've watched the video on Third Phase of Moon, it was a metallic spherical unidentified object in the sky. And it was as I was at a friend's house proceeding to the backyard or going out there. And just before we got out the door, I noticed it in the sky. So I pulled my camera, which was the iPod, out and took the image of it. And basically it sat there for a few seconds, but then it proceeded off to the left and just basically took off at speeds that I wasn't able to get a video of and switch it onto video mode. But yeah, it was quite one of the most amazing things that I've probably seen, and I haven't seen anything like it again.
You know, it is an amazing picture. It shows clearly a saucer. It's at an angle. You could see it's a dome-shaped craft. Anyway, it's out there. You're all going to see it. But right now, we're going back to – thank you, Cordell. We're going back to John Searle and Bradley Lockerman. Now, we talked before we went on the air, Mr. Lockerman, about the law of squares. Now, we in our society are taught that linear thinking is best. And that's wrong. That is not how our brains are hardwired. And apparently we teach them the wrong way. Can you explain why people have made so many mistakes when 5,000 years ago such wisdom and third dimension thinking was used and it's not now, and why the law of squares is so important?
Yeah, I'll take that this way. Let's look at physics up until the 1920s, actually the turn of the century. We come from 1873, James Clerk Maxwell, then the Lorentz equations, and then around the turn of that century, the Michelson-Morley experiments. Now, they provided a set of data that really enhanced physics as it was known at the time. 20 years later, we find E equals mc squared, which is general relativity, and that I view as a branch off of physics. But it was so impacting to all of the physics world. It seemed to function everywhere except on the quantum level. And there are a few chosen people, and not so much chosen, but a few people that understood, and in the case of Tesla, kind of giggled at this E equals mc squared, because that does not function mathematically on the quantum level. But it does give us relativity. Relativity gives us telemetry in space and different aspects of what we understand in explaining the universe. But I think that physics is re-merging with physics prior to relativity, and that, of course, is AETHER, ether physics. There is something else going on. And in the case of the law of the squares, that comes from Lo Shu in China. It's some 5,000 years old, where Lo Shu saw a turtle coming out of the water and saw the squares on the back of the turtle shell, put values in the squares. And, of course, we have Searle coming along in 1932. John, you had a couple of dreams, the hopscotch, and you want to take it from there?
Well, the dreams came twice a year, but there were two types. One that dealt with earthbound requirements. The second one was dealing with flying. Basically, they were using the same concept of the power unit. The flying one, of course, required two more elements to boost that power up to get that lift we need. But dealing with the domestic one or ground use, we had these 4x4 squares, 16 empty spaces. A square is a structure. No structure exists without a function. What is the function of that square? And quite naturally, it's information. Squares or matrices are blocks of information. Most people do not see it because, A, their receptors are not tuned in to see it. It's only people who normally are not brainwashed to a high degree that spot it when they look at it. What the dream says, look at the squares, look at 4, and behold, I got the job at the right time. I had a docket to take to the store for cable, and there was two with a little tiny 2 at the top, the back of 2. I asked the foreman, what does that mean? He said, 2 squares. What's that? So he just drew these 4 squares, 2 by 2. I said, well, it got a value? No, it does a formula. So I told him, it's a structure. It has to have a value in there, or it can't be a structure. So when I got the cable, when I got back to my digs, I started working on this. I basically found that square tree, you could reassemble it so it gave a uniform output. Now, the question was square three the one? No, you were always about to cross over square three to square four. So I looked at square four and worked on that, and eventually, after many attempts, I found it. The square exactly as the dream showed. The bottom left, top right, stepping by three. The three is telling me, step by three. 3, 6, 9, 12. But here it was, perfect. Absolutely as the dream shows. Okay, Brad, you want to?
Yeah, no, just to round that out, the important thing when John talks about the squares, he's talking about the face of a cube. And as that relates to the three-dimensional space that we live in, we have to understand that it's a geometric situation. 6 faces on a cube, and you have to find the correct face. Is that right, John?
That's correct.
Okay, well, we're getting comments and statements right here at Third Phase of the Moon, and this one's from CT Virtue Quest. I'm not sure if you're aware of this, Bradley or John Searle, about, there was a device shown on the Johnny Carson show, and it looked really similar to yours. And he's saying it had spinning magnetic bars, and once it started, it produced many times the energy input and also created a light external anti-gravity field. And this Johnny Carson show was out in the 1980s, and I know we spoke earlier before the radio show about rolling this machine out. How are we going to get it out so this technology doesn't get shut down? Are you aware of this Johnny Carson show video? Because this is something that I was talking about, getting millions of people seeing it right away. How are you going to suppress this thing? And now all of a sudden, this 1980s Johnny Carson show is nowhere to be seen.
Yeah, well, I would ask John Searle, hey, John Roy, did you ever do the Carson show?
No.
Because I know that John was in Canada. He was on TV with the SEG, and but as far as one of the Carson programs, that must be in somebody's archives somewhere. I certainly would like to see that piece of footage.
In Canada, that's a newsreel I was on. It created a little bit of embarrassment for me because they said, when did you make that? I said, 1946. When did you start it up? I said, it's been running all the time. I don't know how to stop it. So the camera came up close to show there was no batteries, no wires, nothing connected to anything, and it stopped dead. And I only just said seconds earlier, it had never stopped. And of course, I stopped talking because I'm shocked. And the camera pulled back to show my face, and off it went again. And that is I've told the answer, how you could stop it. You have to oscillate against that frequency. It's a big oscillator you want. That camera has that frequency beaten against that frequency and just stopped it. It just neutralized all the force. And when it moved away, that force was gone, and away the rollers went again. So now, I can tell the motor industry who said they didn't want the SEG because you couldn't stop it. There was a way to stop it if you really want to. But from my point of view, you never have to stop it. Just leave it alone and forget you got it. It will outlive your life, your family, and their family life. Why worry? Just forget about it. You got no electric bills, no power cut, no threats or anything. There it is. Keeping your house nice and clean, dust-free, you feeling good. Why worry about it?
And Laddie, Maybe you can talk a little bit about some of those more common questions. I know we did this recently as well, but one of the most common questions you've been getting is, John Searle, if you could do it in the 1940s, why can't you do it now?
Well, the answer is elementary. It's not 1946 anymore.
And so that would be a
We're
matter
in a
of...
different world now, completely different.
And so it comes down to a matter of cost, the tooling, the availability of personnel.
Yes, the question is, we are increasing population. Population growth is growing heavy on demand. We cannot meet that demand. To control that demand, up goes the prices. It's just been put up again because there are millions of people all want these materials, copper. They want rare earths for this. Demand is outgrowing our capability to produce those materials. We have to slow it down. Or you've got to stop breeding to allow the market to catch up with you. One way or another, we either got to pay for it or you stop breeding. And that way we can catch up with the demand.
And so when you were doing it back there in the 1940s and especially in the 1950s, you had all the facilities of Midlands Electric, the presses, the magnetized.
We had our own three-phase power station, auto-autos. We had all the power we want. When I said I want that rare earth hit, now they laughed at me because no one ever had magnetized a rare earth. It's impossible. I said to them, hit it, I want to know what happened. And because we had all the power we needed, they did ram it. And when they took the ring out, of course, bolts and nuts and rounds just shot to the plate. They came back, look at this. And that was the first time that rare earth had ever been magnetized.
So, John, you may have been one of the first people to magnetize any of the rare earths, correct?
Yes, because that particular rare earth was only used by glass manufacturers to polish glass or to tint it purple. It had no other effects to their knowledge. So it wasn't very much. It only cost me 32 cents a kilo. Kilos needed for the first plate. That's how cheap it was. You get me a kilo today for 32 cents. You can't. I would pay you double if you could.
There's the video that we released right here at Third Phase of the Moon, provided by Bradley and Professor Searle, and it has the machine, and you claim that it's working at that point. What happened to the machine?
It got confiscated because, hey, I like the business to understand. Now, this council estate, the electric board had to bring power into it. Therefore, they obtained what we call the supreme right to service every house with whatever electrical appliance they use, do the repair, and supply the electric. That means then, being government, you were not intended to make your own electricity. You had to use theirs because they went to a very big investment plan to bring the electric to that estate. Now, of course, when you get a machine and they open it up to find out how it's working and they cannot understand how on earth it's working, it is illegal. It does not conform to their requirement and they confiscate it. That's a problem. In this case, I said, when they opened it and tried to stop it, they destroyed it. If they thought they were going to back engineer it, you cannot back engineer it. Every atom is an SUG itself. To split it, to find out how it is done, you immediately lost all the information. It is a non-back engineered device.
You know, John and Bradley, this reminds me of Nikola Tesla. At his time, he was providing some of the greatest information and technology, and we dismissed him. Edison suppressed him, and finally, sadly, after his death, finally we're using his stuff, such as the alternating current. You've been given information that existed for thousands of years to many people, and this is amazing that you were receiving it, but it's very sad that they're suppressing it. Now, you built 3 of them. Dr. Greer showed your device in the movie, and he claims that these devices are not being built yet because they're suppressed when they're confiscated, but nobody has a working machine right now is what he claims, and anybody who claims they have one really doesn't or isn't close to one. You are different because you have built 3 of them, and you mentioned that they were confiscated. What is it going to take for us to get these not confiscated? I know it needs to be a flood of these devices, small or large, anything. If they were toys that could be powering light bulbs, all these people are going to reverse engineer them to see, wow, how does this device work? Because this can change the world. So tell us, what led to that?
Well, it's simple. Since 1968, when the world became known what I was doing, thousands have tried to make an SUG. They said, oh, sir, giving us a load of rubbish about the maps and all rubbish about how you do the magnet. It's simple. We just will get a load of all the magnets down at the shop, we'll make it. And then they said, sir got his details wrong. It don't work. It is not the cell device they built. They built their own device and then blame Sir for their failure, for not knowing or understanding the mathematics or the details of materials, how they behave. Materials have many footprints. We have to learn what footprints are the best we need to use. That's all I've done. I simply sat back, followed the degrees, and got the results. At first, of course, it took off, and we couldn't solve why. I gave it a body. So it became the IGBS, we call it today. But when we look at it, nothing on the first time was there any information. Scientists said the rollers would not stay on the plate. If they did, they would fly off if you tried to move them. And that's all they've been saying right up to the present day. At our lab, we show you that the rollers, and they're not light, do stay on that plate. They will stay on regardless what speed you just make them rotate. It doesn't matter. It's like the Earth and the Moon. It doesn't matter. Where the Moon is free to shoot off if it requires to, the rollers can't, because they are controlled by 2 types of forces. That is why I'm always standing in square 2. Everything you do must work by 2. You must make sure there are 2. To print, one part must rotate, the other part must move across it. So you've got 2 different functions. There must always be 2 different functions, or otherwise it will not work.
I want to ask you the circumstance when the device was confiscated and what your state of emotion was after you found out it wasn't there.
Well, good, I was angry. But not only that, I was also angry about another event prior to that, where the electric board was asked to come out and repair the boiler. They fixed it, and when they brought it back late at night, next morning, and this was the stroke of luck, the wife asked me to fill the boiler and put it on ready so it's hot when she got up to do the laundry. If she hadn't asked me, when I came back, I would have found a dead wife, not a live one. I filled the boiler, As I went to leave the room and turn on the switch, bang! Fuse box, everything just disappeared. The central light, wire, all went. When I got back home from work, the workman was just leaving. No electric. So I said, what's happened? Where's the electric? Oh, your 40-watt fluorescent light down there. 40-watt. Go get your boss. You're not leaving this house till your boss is here. The chap when they got the boss, he said, what's the matter? He won't allow us to go home. Why? He keeps on insisting. He wants the boiler to turn up. The bottom took off. He wants to see inside. So I've got to turn it up, open the bottom so we can get home. So he opened the bottom and I look at, so 40-watt bulb fluorescent tube took all that meter and fuse boxes out. Really? What's all this stuff in here? So the boss of the electric board looked in. Oh, we'll take it right away. We'll get it fixed tonight. We'll bring it back to you tomorrow. There'll be no bill. They brought it back. But 3 weeks later, a bill did come for £400. And that's what made me angry.
And by the way, guys, this is one of the incidents in an ongoing war or battle, we should say, between John Searle and the Southern Electric Board that led to what everybody feels or thinks is him stealing power or stealing something. He never stole anything. The court case was a derivative of not paying that bill because he was not responsible for it. The council house was responsible for it, but ultimately Southern Electric was responsible for it because that story he just told you is the wiring on a water heater was miswired and it blew out the circuits in his home. So he refused to pay the bill because he's not responsible for it. Furthermore, it could have killed his wife. Murder's a strong word, sorry. But it could have killed his wife accidentally or otherwise. So that leads to the court case. The court case is effectively trying to separate Searle from the electric board in this ongoing battle. So this idea that he was arrested for stealing and all of this other, it was mostly a set of mischief where Searle made the electric board work harder by giving them tasks to do because it was an ongoing battle. So I hope that puts to rest the idea that he was arrested or otherwise for stealing.
You know,
they made me challenge. They challenged me. That was the argument.
We got less than a minute left, but you know, when I said that initially, I was completely in that frame of mind. I knew you didn't do anything wrong. They just wanted to maliciously prosecute you because you had something that they didn't want. Now, technology is a double-edged sword. On one hand, we have all this money in these banks. We're not using cash anymore. They could shut us down. On the other hand, we have YouTube, Third Phase of the Moon, the internet. We are getting the word out. How easy is this technology to understand, and can we get all the scientists, this theory and application for world release to work on? Briefly before we get on, we got 20 seconds.
I think just look at it from a point of view, sidestepping general physics and expanding the point of view. John?
Well, thank you both. We'll be back hour 2. John Searle and Bradley Lockerman will be back next month. We'll talk to you gentlemen soon. Thanks again.